If you have nightmares, we'll dance on the bed, by Lefay, Strent, Chapter 6. So this was how Virgil would die. How cruel to be allowed to think he'd gotten a sliver of a chance to live. Virgil would laugh if he wasn't so damn terrified. He was excruciatingly aware of how alone he was here with the general. Logan may not trust him at all, but he had been willing to let him live at least. But the wizard must have retired for the night. If Virgil sucked up his pride enough to scream for help, Roman would breach the circle and cut him down before the plea left his lips. Virgil could taste the bloodlust in the air. Unless the wizard had sent this one to do his dirty work? No, it didn't make sense, not after their earlier conversation. If anything, this spoke of Roman's own volition and hatred. The wizard doesn't know you're here, Virgil stated, and he must have really believed it because it didn't sound like a question. He's not my keeper, Roman grinned as if they were having a casual chat, and he certainly never should have been yours. Every hair stood on end. Virgil could already feel the sharpness of the blade at his neck. The animalistic will to live snarled at him to get up, to fight back, to do something. He swallowed and rose up to a sitting position ever so slowly. Although the human's eyes sharpened and he leaned back slightly, he allowed the movement. Virgil didn't break eye contact with him the entire time, nor did he show any pain that came with moving his wounded body. As the blanket slipped down past his chest, Roman finally broke away to stare at the bandages. He whistled. They said it was nearly a death blow. Nearly, but not quite, Virgil agreed, voice steely. When Emil had cut into his chest, Virgil couldn't be sure how close to his heart it had gotten. Even for a Fae, that was cutting things close. As it was, even without the magic circle impeding his movements, he probably couldn't take on much of anyone. Roman obviously wasn't too sure of that. He was smart to keep his distance instead of rushing in, no matter how wasted the caution ended up being. For all that he had been injured yesterday, Roman looked hardly affected. The bandages and bruises didn't take away from the cutthroat gleam in his eyes. 21. Virgil blinked and refocused. 21 what? Though his eyes were ivy green, they burned like fire. 21 people died last night. Oh, that many? Roman grinned again, and it was nothing short of vicious. 21 people. 21 good and kind souls, all of them with lives and dreams and families. 21 of them snuffed out because of your kind. They hadn't been by Virgil's hand. But the weight that settled heavily in his chest said it didn't matter. Save a few, more still die anyway. Such was the way of the world. So what was the point in trying? Virgil didn't even know them. Any of these humans, really. Why should it matter? All he knew was that it did. He could have done more, fought harder. Was the kid so important to fixate all his energy on? Thomas's protests came to mind. The way he defended Virgil, had worried for him. A fierce wave of protectiveness swelled inside him. He had many regrets in life, but that child would not be one of them. 21 of us, and how many of you? Roman asked. He waited, but Virgil refused to answer. Just the one. Takes about 20 of us to get one of you. Just one of you. Did they not tell you I helped to bring that one down? Did you know that we humans aren't as easily led as you'd think? Roman countered, a snarl marring his handsome features. I see through your charade, demon. You want to worm your way into the prince's soft heart, devour Selvion from the inside out. I won't let you have your way. That's not what I want! Virgil couldn't help but yell back at him in desperation. Your good Fae spiel won't work on me. I know your kind all too well. Do you know how many of my people I've seen slaughtered mercilessly? How they've danced with the bloodied bodies? Virgil shook his head. Not by me. Do you know how many of your kind I've returned the favor to? Virgil's hands trembled where they gripped the rumpled bedsheets. His skin beaded with cold sweat. Roman glanced at his sword thoughtfully, raising it up. Not enough. Just do it! Virgil screamed at him. He was tired of his hummingbird heartbeat rattling against its cage. He was tired of always living his life in fear, being treated as beneath the rest because that was better than being considered a threat. He was tired of loving something so dearly that would never love him back. And most of all, he was tired of being looked at as a monster after giving everything he ever could to be otherwise. "Enough of this posturing!" The words wrenched out of Virgil's throat, making his wounds twinge agonizingly, but he didn't care anymore. "You're angry, I get it, but I can't bring back the dead, and I can't save the living enough to be worth a damn. Do you really think I wanted this? I never wanted any of this. It didn't used to be like this. But I can't go back in time and stop the war from ever happening any more than you can, no matter how much I gladly would. So stop using me as a scapegoat for the sins of an entire species, and just shut up and kill me if you're going to kill me." Roman didn't lower his sword, but he did stare at Virgil with his eyes wide open. In the midst of his heaving breaths, Virgil noticed the wetness dripping down his chin. He faltered and touched his face, surprised when it came away wet with tears. Oh. He really didn't want to die, did he? And yet, that wouldn't change his own helplessness. The weight in his chest crushed his lungs and made it hard to breathe. Virgil crumpled in on himself, hunching over and hiding his shame behind his hands. "Please," he begged. "Just make it quick. I can't do this anymore. I have nowhere else to go anyway. I knew this would lead to my end. I just couldn't sit by and do nothing anymore, you know? It's stupid, but I just wanted to be brave for once in my life. But this world, it has no place for me. So just end it. Kill me." He could hear the human shuffle in place. "Look at me," Roman demanded. Virgil shook his head, refusing to remove his hands. He didn't want to see his death coming. "Damn it, look at me!" he growled again. "If I'm to kill you, it'll be while you're facing me." The door slammed open. "What are you doing?" a voice rang out. Virgil flinched and looked up. He registered the voice and could see the guardsman Patton standing at the doorway, panting as if he'd run all this way. Roman's eyes rolled skyward, mouth drawn down in a frown at being caught. But his back was toward the door, and he didn't realize that Patton wasn't talking about him. The little form of the prince raced inside. He breezed past Roman, who startled with a squawk, and Thomas threw himself at Virgil. "Mr. Verge!" Thomas cried out joyously. His thin arms did their best to wrap around Virgil, and though his body was small, it carried enough heft to pack a punch when he barreled into Virgil. Virgil bit harshly at his lip to keep from crying out. He blinked back the tears, too stunned to fully register that the prince had went out of his way to come find him, had wanted to see him again, was hugging him this very moment. "Thomas!" Roman flipped out and made to lunge in and grab the prince out of harm's way, but he froze a second before his foot entered the circle. He stared at Thomas in horror, seeing him in the clutches of a fae. "Mr. Verge, they said I couldn't come see you, but I knew you was hurt, so I wanted to see you," Thomas explained with hurried words. He leaned back to beam up at Virgil, but his smile slowly died as he took in the pale, tear-streaked face. "Mr. Verge? Does it hurt?" Virgil broke. He pulled the precious child close and wept.